The courtroom is thick with tension. Lawyers shuffle papers, murmurs ripple through the gallery, but all eyes are on the two figures at the center, Rudy Giuliani, the once vaunted legal titan, standing tall with his hands gripping the podium, ready to deliver his next move. Across from him, Kamala Harris, poised and calm, watches intently, a quiet storm brewing in her eyes. Giuliani's voice fills the space, brash and self-assured. Your Honor, the facts are clear. There's no ambiguity here. This case is airtight. The evidence speaks for itself, and the people have spoken. My client's position is not just legally sound, it's indisputable. His words slice through the air, and the audience shifts in their seats, nodding along to the conviction in his voice. Kamala doesn't flinch. Her gaze locks onto Giuliani, and for a moment, it's as though time itself slows. The room waits. A slight shift in her posture, just enough to signal that she's ready. She rises from her chair with a deliberate slowness. The murmurs die down. All eyes are now on her. Her presence commands the space, like a calm wave before the storm. Kamala clears her throat, her voice a controlled, powerful calm. Mr. Giuliani, she begins, the name heavy in the air, you speak as though this is about facts. You speak as though the law is in your favor. But what you're doing here, in this courtroom, is not just bending the truth, it's breaking it. A beat. The courtroom is still. The audience holds their breath, sensing something monumental is about to unfold. Kamala pauses for a moment longer, allowing her words to settle, and then she delivers the blow. You're trying to sell the American people a lie. A lie so big, it would make even the most hardened criminals wince. Giuliani's face tightens. He tries to hold his ground, but the room is shifting. Gasps echo in the gallery. The energy has changed. Kamala's eyes never leave him as she continues, voice unwavering. The people deserve better than this. And I'm here to make sure they get it. The silence is deafening. Even the judge seems momentarily stunned. But just when everyone thought Giuliani's case was solid, Kamala dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming. The room feels smaller now, suffocating even. Kamala's words hang in the air, echoing off the high walls of the courtroom. Giuliani, flustered for the first time in the entire trial, clenches his jaw. He's been here before, grilling witnesses, controlling the narrative, making the case his. But this is different. The weight of his reputation presses on him. For years, he's been the self-proclaimed Mayor of America, the hero of 9/11, the attorney who took on the corrupt and powerful. His face, his voice, has been synonymous with legal authority, with an ironclad belief in his ability to win at all costs. But in this moment, something shifts in his demeanor. He's not invincible anymore. Not here. Not against Kamala Harris. Kamala is no stranger to the pressure of public scrutiny. She's fought on every front, first as a prosecutor, then as a senator, and now, as vice president, where every word she utters is magnified by the entire country. Yet she stands here with a quiet resolve. Her experience, honed through years of navigating the brutal world of politics and law, has prepared her for this moment. Her every movement, every glance, conveys the same message: she's not backing down. Not this time. This case, with its high-profile players and charged political undertones, is far more than just a legal matter. It's about power. It's about the truth. It's about the integrity of the American legal system itself. What happens here could reshape public opinion, alter the political landscape, and redefine who we trust to wield power in this country. The stakes have never been higher. Giuliani knows it. The cameras flashing outside the courthouse, the pundits and talking heads, the polls tracking every move of this trial, it all hangs in the balance. If he wins, he cements his legacy as a bulldog lawyer, a champion for his side. But if he loses, well, his entire career, everything he's fought for, could be called into question. His credibility, already frayed by scandal and controversy, would be in tatters. Kamala knows this too. Her victory here would be far more than a legal triumph, it would be a symbolic one. It would prove, once and for all, that integrity, not power, should reign supreme in America's halls of justice. For her, it's personal. She's not just fighting to win a case, she's fighting for the soul of the nation. She's fighting for the idea that truth, fairness, and justice still have a place in this country. That they can still prevail, even against the powerful few who think they're above the law. She takes a step forward. The air in the courtroom seems to grow heavier, more oppressive. The judge, a no-nonsense figure, watches intently, but even he can't mask the gravity of the moment. Kamala glances briefly toward him, then back to Giuliani, who's visibly sweating now. The tension is palpable. Giuliani straightens, recovering some of his usual bluster, but it's clear he's rattled. "You can't possibly believe that," he begins, but Kamala's interruption is swift, cutting through him like a knife. "No, Mr. Giuliani," she says, her voice icy and deliberate. "What you've been peddling here is not just a distortion of facts. It's a betrayal of everything this country stands for." The gallery is silent. Kamala's words land like thunder, shaking the very foundations of the case. Everyone in the room knows it's no longer about who can out-talk who. It's about who will win the war for truth, the war for integrity. Kamala continues, her tone unwavering. "The American people deserve more than cheap theatrics. They deserve honesty. They deserve justice. And they deserve a government that doesn't bow to corruption." Her gaze sharpens, focusing on Giuliani. What happens in this courtroom today will resonate far beyond these walls. Giuliani's eyes narrow, and Kamala feels the shift. His desperation is evident, but so is his refusal to concede. This battle is no longer just about winning a case. It's about fighting for the nation's very ideals. But what happened next would shake the foundation of the case, and change everything we thought we knew about legal arguments in America. Rudy Giuliani's rise to power is a tale that many in America know all too well. The self-proclaimed hero of 9/11, the brash prosecutor turned mayor who made a name for himself by toughening up New York City and sweeping away the city's criminals. In his own mind, he was untouchable. A legal genius. A man who had shaped and defined the very principles of justice. But behind that towering reputation, there was another Giuliani, the one who reveled in power, in manipulation, in bending the rules to suit his needs. The same Giuliani who was willing to twist the truth, embellish the facts, and bulldoze his way through any courtroom, no matter the consequences. The man who, despite once being hailed as America's mayor, became a symbol of corruption, self-interest, and arrogance. In the early days, Giuliani was everything his supporters claimed him to be. A young, energetic prosecutor with a passion for justice. He fought to bring down the mob, to clean up the streets, and to take down those who thought they were above the law. At least, that's the story he liked to tell. But as time passed, his vision of justice became clouded, twisted by ambition and ego. As mayor, he was a whirlwind, chaotic, polarizing, but undeniably effective in reshaping the city's image. He cracked down on crime, turned Times Square into a sanitized tourist attraction, and positioned himself as the tough leader New York needed. The media adored him. The people who were grateful for a cleaner, safer city worshipped him. He was the man who, according to him, could do no wrong. But as his political star rose, so did his arrogance. The man who once claimed to be a servant of the people now saw himself as a messiah, untouchable, above the rules. By the time he left office in 2001, Giuliani was at the pinnacle of his career, riding high off the back of his 9/11 leadership. America needed a hero, and he filled that role, almost prophetically, while the world watched in awe. But it wasn't long before the cracks began to show. After leaving office, Giuliani's reputation began to unravel. The man who once savored headlines now found himself struggling to stay relevant. His reputation, once synonymous with leadership, was marred by scandal. It wasn't long before he latched onto political causes and dubious alliances, using his status as a stepping stone to remain in the public eye. The same man who had once decried the corruption of others now began to show the world how easily he could slip into that very same pattern. His tenure as Donald Trump's personal attorney would become his ultimate undoing. A man who prided himself on his legal prowess suddenly became the face of some of the most outrageous and baseless legal claims in recent history. Giuliani, the legal genius, found himself on the wrong side of history, publicly aligning with conspiracies, lies, and courtroom antics that would make any self-respecting lawyer cringe. He wasn't fighting for justice anymore, he was fighting for attention, for relevance, for power at all costs. It became clear, Rudy Giuliani's arrogance had cost him more than his dignity. It had cost him his integrity. Inside the courtroom, the audience could feel it. His once celebrated reputation was now a weight that dragged him down. It wasn't just his legal arguments that were falling apart, it was his persona, his very identity, that was crumbling. Giuliani no longer commanded respect, instead, he evoked disdain, as people saw him for what he truly was, a man willing to sell out every principle for personal gain. And yet, here he was again, standing tall in front of the jury, eyes bright with self-confidence, convinced that his usual tactics would win the day. The same arrogant posture, the same feigned certainty in his arguments, the same overinflated sense of superiority. Giuliani had always believed he could talk his way out of anything. His reputation as a legal genius was built on his ability to manipulate the truth, to spin any narrative in his favor, to dominate the courtroom with his forceful personality. The people around him, his colleagues, his supporters, they all fed into the myth of Rudy Giuliani, the man who could never lose. But Kamala Harris wasn't just any opponent. She wasn't intimidated by his theatrics. She wasn't swayed by his bravado. Kamala had seen it all before, the arrogance, the manipulation, the desperate attempts to control the narrative. And she knew exactly how to counter it. Giuliani, however, didn't see it coming. His history of outsmarting opponents through sheer force of will had led him to believe that he was unbeatable. But little did he know, the very tactics he relied on for years would soon be turned against him in the most humiliating way imaginable. Kamala Harris stands tall in the courtroom, calm and collected, a stark contrast to the bluster and arrogance of her opponent. But her demeanor doesn't come from luck or privilege, it is the product of a lifetime spent fighting for justice in a world that often seemed set against her. Born to immigrant parents, her mother from India, her father from Jamaica, Kamala's upbringing was a fusion of cultures, values, and struggles. She grew up in Oakland, California, a city known for its diversity and vibrancy but also for its challenges. Her mother, Shyamala, a breast cancer researcher, instilled in Kamala a deep sense of purpose, that every day should be dedicated to breaking down barriers, to pushing against systems of power that sought to exclude and marginalize. Her father, Donald, an economist, taught her the importance of discipline and fairness, lessons that would later guide her as a prosecutor and politician. Kamala's early life was shaped by her mother's courage in the face of adversity. Raised in a racially divided America, Kamala faced discrimination, but she never let it define her. Instead, she used it as fuel for her fire. As a young woman, she witnessed the inequalities that plagued the justice system, disparities in education, criminal sentencing, and access to opportunity. She could feel the weight of those injustices, but rather than retreat, Kamala chose to confront them head-on. Her decision to become a lawyer was not just a career choice, it was a calling. At Howard University, Kamala honed her intellect, sharpened her critical thinking, and deepened her understanding of the law. She was an ambitious student, driven by a desire to make a difference, and it was there that she began to realize her full potential. She graduated with honors and went on to study law at the University of California, Hastings College of the Law. After law school, Kamala entered the public sector, where she cut her teeth in the criminal justice system. She worked as a prosecutor in Alameda County, where she quickly gained a reputation for her tenacity and ability to go after the most difficult cases with unflinching determination. But it wasn't just her legal expertise that set her apart, it was her commitment to fairness. Kamala's legal philosophy wasn't about winning at all costs, it was about making sure justice was served, no matter the odds. Her empathy for victims and her fierce advocacy for the underserved and overlooked made her a force to be reckoned with. In 2003, Kamala was elected District Attorney of San Francisco. She became the first woman, the first black woman, and the first South Asian woman to hold the position. But her victory wasn't just about breaking barriers, it was about what she did with the power she now wielded. Kamala fought to reform the criminal justice system, making it fairer, more inclusive, and more just. She took on corrupt police officers, fought for the rights of victims, and pushed for a more humane approach to incarceration. She was no stranger to controversy. Kamala made tough decisions that earned her both admiration and criticism. As a prosecutor, she often had to walk a fine line between being tough on crime and ensuring that the system worked for everyone, regardless of their race, background, or socioeconomic status. She pushed for reforms in the criminal justice system, advocating for alternatives to incarceration for nonviolent offenders and focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment. She wasn't just interested in winning cases, she was interested in making the system better. But as her career progressed, Kamala faced backlash from some of her political opponents, especially when she ran for Attorney General of California in 2010. Critics questioned her record on criminal justice reform and accused her of being too lenient on certain issues. But Kamala, ever the pragmatist, stood firm in her belief that progress could only be made through hard work and persistent reform. She was undeterred by the negative press or the naysayers. She knew the work was far from over, but she also knew it was worth fighting for. Her rise to national prominence came when she was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2016. Kamala's Senate career was marked by her sharp questioning during Senate hearings, where she relentlessly held powerful figures accountable. She wasn't afraid to challenge anyone, from FBI directors to Supreme Court nominees. Her calm demeanor, the kind that was so often misinterpreted as passive, was in fact her secret weapon. It was a sign of her ability to stay focused under pressure, to rise above the noise, and to make every word count. Her approach to politics wasn't about showmanship or getting attention, it was about substance. Kamala didn't chase headlines, she chased justice. She didn't seek the spotlight, she sought to make real change. And when she was selected as Joe Biden's running mate in 2020, it was not just a political calculation, it was a testament to her years of hard work, her vision for the future, and her ability to inspire millions of Americans who had long been overlooked by the political establishment. Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, was now one of the most powerful figures in the country. But despite the accolades and the title, she was still the same person, the brilliant, tenacious lawyer who had spent her life fighting for justice. She knew that, despite the challenges ahead, the work wasn't finished. She was still in the fight. And now, in this courtroom, she stood poised for her greatest challenge yet. Giuliani had thought he could intimidate her, outwit her, or overpower her with his usual bluster. But Kamala wasn't here to play by his rules. She had faced tougher battles before, but this was different. The stakes had never been higher. The courtroom is electric with tension, the air thick with anticipation. The battle of words has begun, and every word counts. Rudy Giuliani paces back and forth, his voice rising as he builds on his argument, pulling every tactic he's used for decades from his bag of tricks. The room hangs on his every word, his sheer force of personality filling the space. This case, Your Honor, is a matter of clear legal principle, Giuliani declares, his voice brash, the confidence oozing from every syllable. The evidence is incontrovertible. My client's position is not just legitimate, it's sacrosanct. And if we're going to ignore the facts for the sake of political correctness, we risk undermining the very fabric of our legal system. Giuliani leans forward, his eyes locking onto Kamala, daring her to challenge him. His words are sharp, a razor's edge meant to cut through any resistance. It's the kind of courtroom aggression he's been using for decades to crush opponents, brash, loud, unapologetic. Kamala, on the other hand, remains still, her expression calm but her eyes sharp and calculating. She doesn't need to raise her voice to command attention. She's already proven that she's more than capable of standing her ground. Every word from her mouth is deliberate, measured. "Mr. Giuliani," she responds, her voice carrying the weight of years of legal expertise. "What you've presented here is not the law, it's a distortion of it. The facts you claim to be so clear are nothing but a tangled web of half-truths and selective interpretations. You're not advocating for justice. You're trying to sell a narrative." Giuliani's eyes narrow. He isn't used to being challenged in this manner, not so coolly, not so effectively. The audience can feel it. Kamala's steady presence is beginning to rattle him. Her voice, calm as a lake, contrasts violently with his storming presence. Giuliani slams his hand on the table, his face flushed with anger. "Selective interpretations," he sneers. "Are you suggesting that I'm lying? That I'm misleading the court? Because if that's your argument, you're not dealing with facts, you're dealing with accusations." The room shifts. Kamala doesn't flinch. She looks him dead in the eye, her gaze unwavering. "No, Mr. Giuliani," she says coolly, "I'm simply stating that your interpretation of the facts is, at best, misguided. At worst, it's a deliberate attempt to mislead this court." The tension in the room builds, the conflict escalating with every word. Kamala's words are like water against stone, slow, deliberate, eroding his arguments one by one. Giuliani's face twists in disbelief. He's used to having the last word, to overpowering his opponents with force and fury. But Kamala is different. She isn't intimidated by his bluster. She doesn't buckle under his pressure. And it's starting to show. Giuliani's voice becomes more shrill, the cracks in his confidence widening. "This is absurd. I've fought for justice my entire life, and now you're questioning my integrity? I've been in this game longer than you, Harris. I know how to win." Kamala's response is swift, direct, and chilling. "Winning at all costs doesn't equate to justice, Mr. Giuliani. There's a difference between being a champion of legal victories and being a champion of truth." The words hit like a punch. Giuliani stumbles back, momentarily caught off guard. The courtroom seems to inhale collectively, the weight of her statement hanging in the air. Kamala's words hang in the room like an accusation that can't be ignored. Giuliani tries to regain his footing, throwing one last insult. "You're too idealistic, Harris. You think you can play by the rules in a world where everyone else is breaking them. This is a game, and you're losing." Kamala doesn't rise to the bait. Instead, she steps forward slightly, just enough to command the space. "Mr. Giuliani, this isn't a game. This is about people's lives. This is about integrity. This is about the law." There's a subtle shift in the room. Giuliani, once so sure of his dominance, is starting to crack under the pressure. His attempts to dominate the courtroom, to bully the truth into submission, are faltering. The audience can feel it. His facade is crumbling, piece by piece, as Kamala's composed, no-nonsense approach pulls the rug out from under him. The judge looks between the two of them, eyes narrowing. Kamala's precision and calm are so different from Giuliani's aggressive, blustering style that it's almost disorienting. For a moment, it seems as though Giuliani's entire case might fall apart in real time. Kamala's eyes flicker back to Giuliani, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in her expression. She's ready. She's been waiting for this. The tension in the room is palpable, the crowd holding their breath as they watch the two clash. But just when it seemed like Giuliani had the upper hand, Kamala unleashed a counterargument that would leave everyone speechless. The courtroom is electric. The tension is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Every eye in the room is fixed on Kamala Harris, who stands poised at the front of the room, her calm and unwavering presence like a beacon of reason in the storm of Giuliani's bluster. Giuliani, his face flushed with frustration, has just unleashed one last desperate attempt to salvage his case. His words were laced with venom, but they landed with the weight of desperation. He's losing control, and he knows it. But in his mind, his argument still stands, and he refuses to admit defeat. Kamala, however, remains unfazed. She's seen this before, the frantic, last-ditch efforts to rally when the facts are no longer on your side. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, never leave him. Her mind is working at full speed, processing every word, every contradiction, every flaw in his argument. And she knows it's time. The room is silent now, the air crackling with anticipation. Kamala steps forward slightly, just enough to project her voice and command the attention of the entire courtroom. Mr. Giuliani, she begins, her voice calm but laden with the weight of truth. You've had the floor for long enough. And yet, you've failed to address the heart of this case, the facts. The law. The very principles of justice that you claim to champion. But what you've presented here is nothing more than smoke and mirrors, an elaborate diversion to avoid the truth. The words hang in the air, and Giuliani's jaw tightens, his face reddening even further. But Kamala doesn't flinch. She steps forward again, her demeanor cool, her logic unassailable. You stand there, pointing your finger at me, accusing me of selective interpretations, of playing fast and loose with the facts. But it's you, Mr. Giuliani, who has been spinning a web of deceit. You're not here to seek justice. You're here to preserve your own image, your reputation, your career. But let's talk about the real facts. Kamala pauses, locking eyes with the judge, who is now visibly intrigued by the turn in the proceedings. The audience leans forward in their seats, the weight of her words beginning to settle in. Let's begin with the so-called evidence you've presented, Kamala continues. You've claimed that this case is airtight, that there's no room for doubt. Yet, time and time again, you've ignored critical pieces of evidence that completely undermine your position. You've misrepresented documents, cherry-picked facts to fit your narrative, and glossed over glaring contradictions in your client's testimony. She pauses again, letting her words hang in the air. Every eye in the room is on her. Giuliani is visibly sweating now, his confidence beginning to crumble as Kamala dismantles his arguments with precision. You've been so focused on pushing your narrative, Mr. Giuliani, that you've completely neglected the key legal principle at the heart of this case, fairness. You've neglected to consider the rights of those affected by this situation, the real victims of your client's actions. You've made it about you, about your need to be right, to win at all costs. But the law isn't about winning, Mr. Giuliani. It's about truth. It's about accountability. Kamala's voice rises slightly, a controlled crescendo that still carries an air of calm authority. The courtroom is on the edge of their seats. And the truth, Your Honor, she says, turning to the judge, is that Mr. Giuliani has done everything in his power to cloud it. He's tried to obscure the facts, distract from the real issue, and manipulate the evidence to suit his own purposes. But the truth can't be hidden. Not in this courtroom. Not in America. She turns back to Giuliani, who now stands frozen, his once confident posture beginning to falter. Kamala's words are surgical, and with each sentence, she chips away at his facade. You've painted yourself as a defender of justice, Mr. Giuliani, but your actions speak otherwise. Your entire career has been built on the illusion of righteousness, on the belief that you could manipulate the system and get away with it. But you can't do that here. Not in front of these people. Not in front of this court. The courtroom is still. Kamala's words hang in the air like a thunderclap. The judge's eyes flick between Kamala and Giuliani, and even he seems to be considering the weight of her arguments. Giuliani, for the first time, looks unsure. His bravado has been replaced by uncertainty, his confidence shattered by the precision of Kamala's rebuttal. Kamala steps back, allowing the weight of her words to settle. She's delivered her punch, and now, the room waits for the fallout. You've made one fatal mistake, Mr. Giuliani, Kamala continues, her voice steady, almost a whisper now. You've underestimated me. You've underestimated the power of truth. And you've underestimated the people who fight for it, no matter the cost. This isn't about your reputation, or your client's case. This is about something far bigger than that. She pauses again, letting the room absorb the gravity of her statement. This is about justice. Giuliani stands motionless, his face a mask of disbelief. He doesn't know how to respond. The air in the room is thick with the tension of the moment, the silence deafening. The gallery is on edge, waiting to see what will happen next. Kamala's eyes never leave him as she turns back to the judge, her voice quiet but resolute. And the law will always prevail over power, Mr. Giuliani. No matter how hard you try to bend it to your will. The courtroom is stunned into silence, as if the very fabric of the case has shifted under the weight of Kamala's words. Giuliani's arrogance, once so imposing, now seems small and hollow in the face of her intellectual and moral superiority. The courtroom held its breath. But as the mic drop moment echoed, one question remained: would Giuliani be able to recover, or had Kamala Harris just won the case? The courtroom's stunned silence lingers, but only for a moment. As Kamala Harris returns to her seat, the energy in the room begins to shift. The tension, once palpable and heavy, breaks like a dam, and soon, the ripples of her devastating rebuttal begin to spread far beyond the walls of the courtroom. Outside, the world is already moving. News outlets, once cautious and measured, erupt with headlines of Kamala Harris's brilliant counterattack. Kamala Harris destroys Giuliani in courtroom clash, one banner reads. Another, a legal masterclass, Harris exposes Giuliani's lies in jaw-dropping rebuttal. The reactions are immediate, and they are overwhelmingly in her favor. She's not just a political figure now, she's become a symbol of the fight for truth in an age of deceit. Social media explodes within minutes. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, every platform is abuzz with the shockwaves of the courtroom showdown. Hashtags trend almost instantly. Hashtag Kamala crushes Giuliani. Hashtag truth prevails. Hashtag legal genius. The posts flood in at an overwhelming pace, with users across the country applauding her composure, her clarity, her unwavering commitment to the law. Memes pop up everywhere, one showing a cartoon Kamala, calm and unshaken, towering over a crumbling Giuliani, who is depicted as a pile of rubble. Another shows her calmly sipping a cup of coffee with the caption, "When you've just destroyed a career but you still have time for a latte." The memes are funny, but they carry a powerful message. Kamala is not just a politician, she's a cultural force, a hero for the moment. Legal experts and commentators take to the airwaves. Across news networks, pundits debate her brilliance. This is why she's one of the most skilled legal minds of our time, one commentator says. What we saw today was Kamala Harris, not just as a politician or vice president, but as a master of the law. She took Rudy Giuliani apart with the precision of a surgeon. The public reaction is overwhelming. Celebrities, from actors to athletes, musicians to activists, express their admiration for Kamala's victory. Kamala is a queen, writes one famous actress on Instagram, sharing a clip of the moment Kamala dismantled Giuliani. What a moment for women, for justice, for all of us. On Twitter, NBA stars and social justice advocates alike tweet their praise. Kamala showed what it means to be fearless. A reminder of why we fight for justice, says a high-profile activist. The world's most powerful people weigh in too. Former political leaders, legal luminaries, and even international figures praise Kamala's poise under pressure. What Kamala Harris did today is what every public servant should aspire to, using the power of the law to protect the truth, says a prominent former U.S. senator. The tone is one of collective celebration. Kamala's victory is not just her own, it's one for every person who's ever fought for fairness, dignity, and truth in the face of overwhelming power. Back in the courtroom, the judge watches the eruption of media coverage, his eyes narrowing with approval. He knows, as everyone else knows, that this moment will be remembered for years to come. It's bigger than just this case. It's a cultural turning point. As the news spreads, the public begins to reflect on the implications of Kamala's victory. People are sharing their own stories, stories of fighting for justice, of overcoming obstacles, of standing up against powerful forces that try to manipulate the system. Kamala's victory becomes a rallying cry for those who feel silenced, for those who believe that the system is rigged, for those who want to see the truth prevail. Even the political opponents who had once been dismissive of Kamala are forced to take notice. Social media erupts with posts from figures who, just days ago, would have dismissed her as just another politician. Kamala is a force to be reckoned with, one former Republican strategist admits on a primetime talk show. She's got the legal chops, and more importantly, she's got the heart to go with it. That's why she won today. At the same time, there's a palpable sense of unease among Giuliani's supporters. They see the narrative slipping away from them, and they know it. They're scrambling. Legal experts begin to question the foundation of his case. How could he, once seen as a legal titan, falter so spectacularly in a single moment? The public sees Kamala's intellectual and emotional superiority, and it shifts the conversation entirely. Giuliani, the former hero of New York, is now the punchline of every late-night show, every Twitter feed. Kamala's victory, while resonating across the country, is felt most deeply in the hearts of those who have fought for justice in the shadows. The marginalized, the oppressed, and the overlooked. Kamala, with her background, her empathy, and her unshakable dedication to fairness, represents a victory they've long awaited. Her words, her clarity, her control of the moment, those are the qualities that make her a true hero. As the ripple effect spreads, Kamala's name becomes synonymous with triumph. For many, she represents the triumph of truth over corruption, of clarity over noise, of integrity over self-interest. It's a moment in time when justice is seen not as a distant ideal but as a very real, very attainable goal. But even as Kamala basked in the glory of her victory, rumors began to swirl about Giuliani's next move. Word on the street is that he's not going down without a fight. And with every whisper of his next steps, one thing becomes clear: this battle is far from over. Kamala may have won today, but there's still more at stake. The question now isn't just about winning the battle, it's about securing the future. As Kamala looks ahead, knowing the spotlight will never fully dim, she understands one undeniable truth: the fight for justice is ongoing. And she's ready for whatever comes next. As the cameras flicker off, the courtroom slowly empties, but the resonance of Kamala's victory continues to pulse through the air. It's a quiet moment, but in her mind, the weight of it is immense. This case, this battle, had never been just about Giuliani, or the spectacle of the courtroom drama. It was about something deeper, a fight for what is right, for what America stands for the very heart of justice. Kamala stands alone for a moment, her eyes taking in the stillness of the courtroom. The echoes of her words: the truth can't be hidden. Not in this courtroom. Not in America, linger in the air. They had been more than just a legal argument. They were a declaration, a promise to the people that justice, though often elusive, can be found when the courageous rise to seek it. Her victory wasn't just about exposing Giuliani's lies or tearing down the corrupted foundation of his arguments, it was about something much more profound. It was about a reminder to the world that truth, when pursued with integrity and intellectual rigor, will always rise above arrogance and deceit. That no matter how powerful, how entrenched, how comfortable one might be in their belief of invincibility, the law has its own power, one that no person, no matter how brash or influential, can overcome. Kamala's gaze shifts to the crowd outside the courthouse, the flood of supporters and well-wishers that have gathered. They're not just cheering for a political figure, they're cheering for justice. They're cheering for the truth. And in that moment, Kamala understands something that, despite all her years in public service, has always been true: it's not the battles you win that matter the most. It's the message you leave behind. The victory today had not only given her the opportunity to show that she could outsmart the villain at every turn, it had reminded the country of something they sometimes forget in the heat of daily life: that truth is worth fighting for. Integrity, even in the face of the most powerful opposition, is worth defending. And that the law, when applied fairly and justly, can be a force for good. A force that transcends politics, transcends power, and ultimately transcends the individuals who think they're above it. But Kamala also knows that this is not an end. This victory, no matter how important, will not erase the challenges still ahead. In fact, it highlights the urgency of the work yet to be done. The system of justice is imperfect, and the forces of corruption, inequality, and bigotry have a long reach. Kamala's victory over Giuliani is a step forward, but it is not the last step. She stands at the center of a moment in history, but she is also acutely aware that the fight for justice is ongoing. There are still people in America who feel marginalized, overlooked, silenced. There are still communities whose voices are drowned out by the machinery of power. Kamala's work is far from done. But in this moment, her victory has proven that when you fight with conviction, when you speak with clarity, when you act with integrity, you can change the tide. You can take down the giants. It's a reminder to all of us, no matter who we are, no matter where we come from, that we have the power to make a difference. To challenge the status quo. To fight for what is right, even when it seems impossible. Kamala Harris's triumph is a reflection of this truth, that the collective strength of those who fight for justice can overcome any force that seeks to silence them. She steps forward again, taking one last glance at the courtroom, at the people outside, at the legacy she is helping to build. This victory, this moment, is more than just hers, it belongs to every person who has ever stood up for what's right. It belongs to the people who have fought to be seen, to be heard, to be treated with dignity and respect. Kamala's victory wasn't just a win for her, it was a win for all of us. For the workers, the immigrants, the dreamers. For the mothers, the fathers, the children who will inherit a world that can, and will, be better. And as the nation watched, one thing became clear, the fight for justice was far from over. In the stillness of that moment, Kamala knows that there is more to do. More people to fight for. More battles to face. But she also knows that with every step forward, with every victory for truth, we grow closer to the world we all want to live in, a world where the rule of law isn't just a concept, but a living, breathing force that can move mountains. And Kamala Harris, with her unwavering courage and unshakable belief in the power of justice, will be there every step of the way. Kamala Harris didn't just destroy Rudy Giuliani's legal argument today, she destroyed the myth that truth and justice can be silenced by arrogance and corruption. Her victory wasn't just a win in the courtroom, it was a triumph for all of us who believe in the power of integrity, the law, and the relentless fight for what's right. In the face of one of the most formidable figures in American politics, Kamala stood unwavering, calmly and confidently dismantling every falsehood, showing the world that truth can still prevail. Her brilliance, her grace under pressure, her moral clarity, this is the leadership we need. But this moment doesn't end here. Kamala's victory is not just a story for today, it's a reminder that the fight for justice is ongoing. Each of us has a role to play in this fight. Whether it's standing up for the truth, speaking out against injustice, or holding those in power accountable, we all have a responsibility to continue pushing for a better, more just world. So, if you believe in the power of justice, if you stand with Kamala and her unwavering commitment to truth, now is the time to take action. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to stay connected to the movement for justice. This fight is far from over, and together, we can make sure that every voice is heard, every truth is acknowledged, and every injustice is met with accountability. Join the movement. Be a part of the change. The future is ours to shape, and with courage and conviction, we will keep fighting for a better tomorrow. Justice is not a spectator sport, it's a movement. Are you in?